Spider-Man has an absolutely timeless design. You'd think since his iconic costume is so well designed, Marvel would make sure to keep his designs as close as possible to the original. But instead we get suits like these. Now you may think, well yeah, there isn't anything wrong with change. And you'll be right, but there's a surprising amount of fans who want to just see the classic suit perfectly accurate in every adaptation. Don't believe me? Well, why do you think people are conflicted about the Marvel Rivals design, but everyone automatically accepts the final swingsuit is the best? Well, because it's familiar. Of course it has its changes like new logos and textured fabrics, but at the end of the day it's just classic Spidey. These types of fans only want redesigns to be like this, with very minimal liberties taken. But to that I say, this would be incredibly boring. Now before you raise your pitchforks, allow me to elaborate. Take a look at some of these designs. Many would consider these the perfect Spider-Man suit. And honestly, I would too. However, if this was all we got, eventually we'd get bored of just seeing the same thing. That's why we constantly see Marvel experimenting with different ways to switch things up, with varying degrees of success.
What the hell?
But you might be asking, why am I even telling you any of this? Well, I'm here to convince you that not every Spider-Man suit has to be comic accurate. Let's take a look at some Spider-Man designs that don't try to look like the original. And I don't mean suits like these, I'm talking about suits that aren't trying to be the classic suit, yet aren't trying to be something entirely different. These are costumes that are putting their own spin on the original. Let's see if they're any good. Maybe they don't all suck. Let's see. Just maybe. Ugh. Now, I know I just said I was going to try to convince you that straying away from the OG is a good thing, but first I want to talk about how it can go horribly, horribly wrong. The integrated suit is an absolute mess of bad color placement, too much details, and an overall confusing design. Whether you like this suit or not, I think we can all agree it's a bit hard to follow. Like we have the red, black, and gold, which is a really solid color palette, but then they screwed that up by adding black lines into the gold logo, adding red where it just doesn't make sense, and filling in some of the gold parts with black. It's just confusing. Overall, it's incredibly complicated and would take ages to make. You know, that description reminds me of another suit, the Amazing Spider-Man suit. This is one of my favorite Spider-Man suits of all time. But how come I love this one and not the integrated suit? They're both complicated, over-detailed, and confusing. Well, to that I have to ask you one question. Who is Peter Parker? Is he an innocent young boy who gets all his tech made for him by a billionaire? Then his suit should reflect that. Is he a damaged teenager who has pent up anger, trauma, and longs for answers to his past? Then you get this suit. I love this suit because it fits the man wearing it. This suit does not. The Amazing Spider-Man suit has a complex and confusing web pattern, a ridiculously complicated fabric texture on the red, and an angry look. This isn't your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but it's not trying to be. This is an angry and lost boy who's trying to figure out who he is. When he gets the friendlier suit in the second movie, it's because he's not a boy anymore. He's a man who knows what he is and what he can do. And he embraces that to become a hero. Wait, this is turning into a character analysis video. In short, the suit is good because it reflects who Peter Parker is in this movie. It's also just fun to look at. The textures, shiny logos, and reflective lenses really give it depth. Next I want to talk about the Marvel Rivals suit. Now I know it got updated. People are still telling me this as if that old video isn't like 6 months old. But anyway, the new version is really good. I still think the old one is pretty good, contrary to what that old video said. I think everyone, including myself, was way too hard on it. I'm glad they updated it though. This is a good design here. And it's clearly not trying to be the classic suit. It's doing its own thing. Putting blue on the gloves is a decision I always really liked. I liked it in the 2017 show and I like it here. However, the back is where things get a little bit interesting. So they segmented the belt on the back, but they put a little piece in the middle to kind of fill it in. Why in the world would you do that? It reminds me of the little line they had on the segmented belt of the Avengers suit. All that did was draw attention to the fact that there's no belt, and this suit faces a very similar problem. When you just add an extra little part, why not just do the whole thing? I would even rather them do the Midnight Suns thing of segmenting it in the back completely. It doesn't make it bad, it's just a weird decision. I'm glad they made the back logo red. It always had better contrast in the black one. Although I do kind of miss the black one. Not many suits do a black back logo on the back. Why did I say that? I find it very unique that they decided to branch out that way, but I'm fine with the red logo. I really love the black borders in the red sections. I've always loved that in Spider-Man suits, and it's great here. The lenses are amazing too. Overall, this is a really good design. It has some strange things about it, but it tries to branch out from the OG, and in my opinion, it's a successful attempt. Next, I want to look at the advanced suit. People may love this design now, but it wasn't always that way. At first, people didn't like this one due to its very different look. It was a very orange shade, had white logos, and just looked very different to any Spider-Man suit we'd seen before. This one is very obviously trying to be different, and I really respect it for that. I prefer the refined version from Spider-Man 2, but I feel like this one tries to branch out a little bit more. These little panels on the legs are something we've never really seen before on a Spidey suit, and it adds some much needed red to the leg section since this suit doesn't have boots. According to an interview, they made this choice to make it seem more like athletic shoes. When looking at it in context, it looks cool, but on its own I definitely prefer some boots, especially since they'd help round out the color palette more. The white accents were a genius decision. It contrasts both the red and the blue super well, which allowed them to let the logo trail out onto both sections. I think that decision was really cool, and it's really interesting to have the emblem break out of the red for once. The colors are where I'm conflicted, because while I do think the shade of blue is alright, the red is just atrocious. Putting orange on your Spider-Man suit is not okay. Sometimes it can work, but in this design, it does not. Funny thing is, on the box art, they literally changed the colors of the suit to look more red. Why doesn't it look like that in the game? Nobody knows. But regardless, I still think the advanced suit is a fantastic redesign. It's very clearly trying to be its own thing, and I respect it a lot for that. Next, we're looking at the MCU Iron Spider. Now you might be asking, Mr. Zone, if this is a video about good Spider-Man designs that aren't trying to be the classic suit, why are you talking about the Iron Spider? Well, hear me out. I actually kind of like it. Now, before you find my location and tickle me, just get the real Iron Spider out of your head for a minute. When comparing this suit to the original, I could never, ever like it. It's a terrible adaptation of a comic book suit. This is not an Iron Man themed Spidey suit. It's more like an upgraded Spider-Man. And I use that term very, very lightly. My point is, we have to look at the suit for what it is, instead of what it's not. When not comparing it to the original, I think it's kinda cool. It's not super well designed, but in Infinity War, it looks good. The color grading and lighting of the movie go a long way to making it look good though, because anytime it shows up in anything else, it looks like trash. In its first appearance, the suit had a very dark blue. It almost looked black. But in every other appearance, they give the suit a completely different shade of blue, which throws off all the contrast and highlights all the lines. Now, lines aren't a bad thing. On a suit like this, they make sense, but there should be a point where you just stop and think, why am I doing this? Like, you don't need this many. And when they change the shade of blue, it really brings all the extra ones to the forefront. It looks terrible. In Spider-Man PS4, it looks atrocious. The red looks super orange, the blue is so washed out and bright that it looks gray, and the gold just looks gross. This is not how you color this suit. I made an edit of the game version to show you how it should look if it was trying to be more accurate to the movie. The problem for me is that with the right colors, it looks really cool. But every time the suit is put into something else, they butcher the colors and it throws everything off. Is this suit well designed? No, not really. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a cool look, specifically when looking at it on its own. I still think this is a terrible adaptation of the Iron Spider, and I would very much rather them just put in that suit instead of making this, but this is what we got. So hopefully throughout this video, I've showed you that not every Spider-Man redesign has to be comic accurate. I love the classic suit, it's my favorite superhero costume ever, and that's not changing anytime soon. But I see so many people in the community ruling out a lot of suits immediately just because they don't look like the original. So hopefully I convince you to give them a chance. With that being said, take care and have a super blessed day.